Welcome, everyone. This is Covendom. It's a weekly occult podcast that you can view on Facebook, through YouTube, and through many other aspects of social media. My name is Levi Rowland, and this is Brian Cain. We are both Alexandrian priests. And today's topic is going to be rebellion versus dedication in the craft. Dedication. I've had a Red Bull. Let's do this. That's real witchcraft. No, rebellion versus dedication in the craft. Very interesting topic. So we always start with tarot card. You want to do that first?
Yes. Is this on?
Yes. Is this on? Hey. Yes, it's on.
Don't see anyone. That's very unusual.
Right there. See?
Oh, they've changed it.
You can see where it's being sent to. Yep.
Why isn't it on here like it used to be?
It will be.
Oh, okay. Oh, just no one's messaged something. It's just showing who's looking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gotcha.
So for my tarot today, I brought the Ancient Italian Tarot. I think it's hilariously named because it's a reprint of a 19th century deck. But it's a Marseille deck, Italian inspired. It's actually the deck I read with at Hex. So I thought I'd change it up and actually bring a working one today. So I'm going to give it a few shuffles. And Brian's going to give it a cut and a knock. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. I feel very Jesus-y today. Today's tarot card is the Queen of Wands. Queen of Wands, a fiery woman, a creative woman. Usually in a lot of old systems, it was a woman from the rural, part of the world, a country woman, trustworthy but passionate. Fertility is associated with this in my readings a lot too, if somebody's asking about it, because she carries a big stick, right? Fiery, passionate, a redhead.
Interesting.
Yeah, so female dominance might be something that comes up a little bit. That makes sense with everything going on in the news right now about the need for a little bit of female rebellion. So I'm here for it.
And that is the topic of our show today.
Yes, it is.
Of course, we're talking about witchcraft, but I think those things go hand in hand.
They do.
So, show and tell. What is your show or tell?
I got no show and tell today. I didn't bring anything because I'm a teacher when I'm not here, and it's the last day of school. So my tell is I'm free. I'm free. You don't even know how good it feels. But no, that is my tell. My tell is the summer is beginning, and I love it.
Well, there is a lot going on with you.
Yeah, there is.
Oh, I didn't really do a show and tell either, but I decided I'd talk a little bit about my book again. For those of you who have been watching social media, I put out a teaser, or Warlock's Press put out a teaser about my book, a teaser of the book cover, and the reaction was a bit insane. Thousands. The last report I saw was on Facebook alone. It had over 30,000 reactions, over 100 and something shares, which is a lot of shares. Really, really big. Lots of positive feedback, lots of negative feedback, all based on, assumedly, my picture on the book. I think there's more to it than that, of course. But I think it's actually very good publicity.
Oh yeah, there is no such thing as bad press, right?
And I don't think I would have gotten that much press from a mainstream publishing company, to be honest with you. I don't.
No.
Out of all the books that are being published on social media,
you're so lucky people hate you.
I know, isn't it wonderful to be controversial?
What a blessing.
All you did was pose. People don't like the picture because they don't understand it, or because I'm wearing makeup, or because I look too effeminate, or because I look too weird. Or because I'm on the cover, or because it's me, or because I'm married to Christian. I think it's a lot more than that. A lot of people do like the book. I've gotten tons of positive feedback. There
Not
are
from us.
People who work at major ad agencies who have completely, complimented Christian on the design of the book. I'm very, very critical of any picture of mine, so when we settled on that one, I didn't particularly like everything about it, but finding a picture I really like of myself, 100%, is hard. It was the vision, and it was my vision to do that. I wanted to wear white because that is the primary robe of Alexandrians, the color of Alexandrians. It's also the primary color that was used by the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, and the Celts for religious rituals, So the ancient world, it's not kind of a new thing. I know we're all into black. I love black, obviously. It's one of my favorite colors.
Black on black on black.
Not generally a temple color for me. It's not generally, I don't wear those colors for my own personal aesthetic. However, I didn't want the picture to look too holy, and I had a vision of weaving these different worlds together and presenting it. And although it didn't 100% match what was in my head, it got the message across. I did not expect it to be very controversial. You know, I expected that certain people wouldn't like it, certain people would make fun of it. I expected that. And I expected that a lot of people would like it.
Yeah.
Younger generations, people who are, you know, more connected to what I'm doing, perhaps. Whereas, you know, there's a whole generational divide in the craft about what we can do and what we can't do, and
hence rebellion.
You know, I find it quite, you know, jumping ahead. Find it quite interesting that some of the things we get critiqued for are things that the elders all did.
Yep. Like Patricia Crowther on the cover of her books.
Okay, you know, wearing a Halloween costume.
Or wearing nothing.
Or wearing that. Well,
yeah.
I'm not saying what's inside the book. That's what's even funnier. The don't judge a book by its cover comes to mind.
I know, right?
I'm not going to apologize for not having bubble art on my cover, you know, and I do realize that most authors do not get a say on what goes on their cover. I know Christian had to fight very hard to get Robert the Skull on his cover. He wanted to be on the cover, and Weiser said we do not put, no one puts occultists or witches on covers anymore. Well, Christian and I we don't really follow the anymore model of things. So when we started Warlocks Press, we decided one of the things we wanted to do is sort of pay homage to that older style and try to get the authors on the cover. We're not going to force them to, obviously. But it is a vision of the company, it's something we want to do. And I just think it's really goes along with this. I didn't do the book cover to rebel, nor did I do it to be disciplined. I did it as an artistic expression of myself and the contents in the book, and not everyone's going to like your artistic expression. You know, it's not going to happen. No. So that's okay, I don't mind. We may have an alternative hardcover, I don't know yet, it's still in the works. So
here for it.
I'm tickled pink. I would not have let the cover come out if I didn't think it was beautiful. Had a woman message me saying, you know, if you're going to look weird, people are going to judge you. And I'm like, really? Anyone who's on my Facebook can see that I wear makeup all the time.
He does.
Not all the time, every day. I wear makeup
4 a.m., just straight out of bed.
Inside and outside of the magical circle. I always have.
He's like that kiddo on YouTube that's having that real rough couple weeks.
Thinking I did my makeup for that book cover is a bit ridiculous. And no one complained when I was wearing makeup on MTV or other shows I've been on, or when I was wearing makeup and a pointed hat in the Boston Globe, which is not a small newspaper. No one complained. But you put it on a book cover and people go wacko jacko. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a lot of things. I think people just did not want to see a face on a book anymore. I think they got mad about it. I don't think they understood that. And I like what you said. The elders all did it. Patricia did it. Gerald did it. You know, like they were always on them. The Farrars, my God, actually all of them used to do it. It's the funny thing. Like
and
it used to be what
they're not the
people
critics.
did.
Most of them are dead. But I find
they can't criticize you when they're dead.
It's very hard to, you know, to rationalize that we idolize these people, and then if we try to emulate them in any way, somehow we're stepping out of line.
Well, we want to.
But however, our book is, my book is, it's what's in it that matters, and I actually.
People are going to hate you way worse for that.
Oh yes,
trust me.
And I hazard, because it is not apologetic. It does represent the craft from my perspective.
Yeah.
However, you know, it is my craft, so I'm not apologizing for that.
You should have to.
However, I think that the title Initiation is what's really got people.
I do too.
And they can't really say much about that, so they go after the picture. But you know, we'll see. Anyway,
which
moving
brings
on,
us to Rebellion.
The show. So we'll start out with your blurb about the show. Dedication versus rebellion, witchcraft.
So, the first thing that came to mind when Brian told me the topic of this show was the very first time I ever read Margot Adler's Drawing Down the Moon, you know, a classic work that a lot of us have read, I'm sure, the history of neo-paganism and witchcraft in America. And in one of the first sections, she opens it up with a Bible quote from 1 Samuel that I love, which is, "Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft." Some modern translations change that to divination, but it is witchcraft is most of the old school translations. And It is rebellious to be a witch, inherently. You know, that is part of what it is. The entire mythology, we did a whole show on mythology, was I reject the church, I go into the woods, I find something else, or I want the ancient temples, I want the ancient knowledge. Whatever your particular rebellion is, you are rebelling against the mundane. Literally, sacred and mundane are antonyms, right? Mundane means of the world, sacred means set apart. So that is rebellious, always. However, we live in a different era now. And so I think the most important question I'm going to keep coming back to this whole show, I'll bring it up a lot, is what are you rebelling against? That's, you know, I'm here for rebellion, big fan, but you better have a purpose. A Rebel Without a Cause is a good James Dean movie, and he looked real pretty in it, but you better have a reason.
He died in a car crash.
He did. These are facts. These are facts. But no, rebellion is great, but rebellion against what? Rebellion against whom? And are you really a rebel? You know, I ask this question all the time with my friends. In the modern era, if you're in a gaggle of secular humanist leftists, the Puritan is the rebel. The Calvinist is the rebel. The traditionalist is the rebel.
Rebel's not always the good guy, is what you're saying.
Exactly. As if you finished Game of Thrones, no spoilers, you gonna figure that out real quick. You know, the revolutionaries are sometimes crazy. So that's what I want to keep coming back to is, yes, rebellion. Rebel against tyranny. Rebel against, you know, false knowledge and mundanity. But make sure that's what you're really rebelling against and you're not just mad at dad, right?
Yeah, and there is a lot of that. You know, we're going to be speaking that today. Today's a little bit of a complicated conversation, and, you know, for me, I think what inspired me about it was hypocrisy that I find in the craft. Actually, within the initiates, that I find this hypocrisy, to where, like I said earlier, the elders can do no wrong, but if you try to do like them, you're stepping out of line. The judgment, that sort of thing. So I think, where does the internal discipline and rebellion begin and end? You know, when I first got initiated into Alexandrian craft, Christian said something to me that stuck, and I think it was a spirit within our tradition. He said, "I'm glad you're Alexandrian, because do you know what?" I said, "What, Christian? You're expecting something." He said, "Really, they're the cool kids that ran away from home. You know, they were rebels, you know, and it fits the spirit of you." And they were. At the time, Alex was a rebel in the craft, you know. He wasn't going against the craft or the nature of the craft, but he was going against the social construct of the time. He was going against the powers that be at the time. He was going against those human beings who felt they were in charge of the craft at the time. And he wasn't following their every lead. Yeah. And because of that, they hated him, you know, some of them. Obviously, people don't think that way as much about Alex now, not the new generations. You know, he's idolized. He is one of the founding elders. His work, you know, I think a lot more credit, he's due a lot more credit than he has received. Not that he was a saint or a perfect person. No. None of them were. They were good witches. The elders were good witches, or became good witches, you know, and we owe them a great deal. So no disrespect intended, but I think that if they were around today and could talk to all of us, they would say, relax. Yeah. Get a hold of yourselves. There's nothing wrong with what anybody's doing, you know. Yes, there's some things they'd say that's not the craft that we practice, that's not something that we taught, and they would be a bit puzzled by it. But I think that there's still room within the craft itself for rebellion, and I think that staying in the box all the time it creates harmony, but harmony in the craft or harmony in your circle is not always a good thing. Sometimes you do have to push the envelope, and I'm not claiming that's my job. I actually do it quite on accident, you know, by existing, or who I'm married to, or what color eyeliner I wear. Usually when initiates hear what I have to say, they're pleased by it most of the time, unless it's about them.
Unless we're just talking.
So I'd like to look at that, but I am also with Levi, and I think he's going to take the lead at looking about, you know, what is the overall arching rebellion in witchcraft, and what is the discipline in witchcraft, and how do we balance these two things within ourselves and within our teachings and within our practice? When is which? You know, when is one good and one destructive? Because I think they both can be. I think you can be too disciplined, and I think you can be too rebellious.
Agreed.
Extremes.
But it's kind of like, I go back to reading the very first time, maybe you've heard or you read Paradise Lost, in school or whatever, and you get to that great famous quote, one of the most famous quotes that any fictional devil has ever uttered: better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven, right? Great quote. Big fan. Love the ideology. But here's the problem with that. You are still admitting that there is a place you don't rule, right? You are ceding power when you have that kind of rebellion, when you're just mad at an authority figure. Instead, that authority figure should be meaningless to you.
She's saying I'm muted.
Yeah, I think you might be a little further away from the mic.
Did I say all that and no one could hear me? Could no one hear me that whole time?
No, you're on. You hear me.
Okay, well, I'm not muted for everyone, so...
No, and you're on over here.
Apparently, Elizabeth can't hear me. Is there anyone else who can't hear me?
Yeah, how's the volume out there, guys? Give us a message.
Oops.
Okay, they say they can hear you on YouTube. And I see that your volume is up, so you should be able to...
Was it something lagging on Facebook?
It could have been. It could have been. If it continues, let us know. But
yes,
I think
please.
right now we're good.
I don't really like wasting my time.
No. And they see you're good.
Okay, good.
Good.
Anyway, to sum that up, because I'm long-winded. So if you'd like to call in, we're doing this now, because the video calls are not as... people don't want to be seen. So we're going to reserve that for guests, but you can call in audio. And the number is 504-252-0391. If you call in, please limit yourself to 2 questions. And, feel free.
Yeah. And there is a little bit of a delay when you call. So if we're waiting, it's not that we can't hear you. It's just that it's set up that way. And again, the number, and I'll keep doing it, and I might even put it on comments in a second, is 504-252-0391. And give us a shout out and message if you're going to call so that we can be ready for it, right?
And if you are listening from Facebook, please go to our YouTube channel, Hex Education, and like our page, and you can see all of our past videos on there and watch them.
Yeah. So, but what I was saying is, again, I went back to that famous quote, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, because it's that whole concept of, I'm going to go be a witch. I don't need the church. I don't need my parents. Great. That's part of it. Rebellion is important to find yourself. But I prefer a bigger rebellion, which is I rebel against all of this. I don't cede the authority to some figure that I'm afraid of, right?
Is there a way to turn this up? Somebody's saying it sounds like I'm far away. Is that better, everyone?
Yeah, you should be up now, because I upped you here too.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But that's what I would say. That's one of my big things that I wanted to start with is rebel, yes, but target your rebellion, right? If you're just rebellious by nature and it's just about destruction and ruination, then that's what you're going to cede. Dedication matters, right? Rebellion is beautiful with an endpoint.
Well, I think we all know there's been a huge movement in the magical community of I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. But I'm going to have some questions for you, Levi.
Sure.
Until we get questions from the audience.
Yes, please feel free on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere. We get all of your questions and comments right here.
Why do you think modern practitioners fear dedication and discipline?
A couple reasons. It's a lot of reasons. The big one is that most of them are coming to us from Christendom, from Christianity, and they feel really mad about that. They were wounded by it, or the church was mean to them, or whatever. So they have a chip on their shoulder, which I totally get and understand, but that's a big part of it. They don't, anything that smacks of that, like you need to do X, Y, Z or whatever, they get really touchy about. The second thing is the culture we live in now. It's not cool to be a joiner anymore. Postmodernism is really big about laissez-faire living. It's really big about I'm spiritual, not religious. It's really big about not being committed to anything, right? As an ism. You dabble, you touch. I'm just finding myself. I'm on a journey. It's a really big culture of, it's almost cultural capital now to be nonchalant. Anybody who's too into something is problematic or whatever. So I think it's cultural. I think we're at a time now where a lot of people fear anything committed. They want to exist in that sort of constant place of they can always change their mind whenever they want. And the other thing is fear
about marriages now.
About marriage, about anything. Yeah. And it's fear of missing out. It's FOMO, which reigns over everything. Well, I can't join that because what if the other thing comes along and it's even cooler or whatever? So I made a Facebook post recently that summed this up. I said, having faith in the vessel that you use to cross the water does not make you arrogant, right? Because if you keep changing the boat, you're never going to get across the water. You're just going to be on the other shore constantly changing the damn boat. You're never going to go anywhere. So eventually, you're going to have to paddle over the river.
All right, ask me a question.
Ask you a question?
He's never prepared.
I'm never prepared. I just show up and I just sit down and I drink and I go, okay, this is what I do with my life on Fridays. Great. No, I have a question. What do you think is the biggest thing that we're rebelling against by choosing such a controversial life, as such a controversial moniker as witch? You know, witch is a harsh word historically. They burned people for it. So what are we rebelling against the most?
I can only speak for myself. I could say what I think other people do it for, which is a multitude of reasons, some good and some bad. For me, originally, it started out with a belief in magic. So in that sense, I was rebelling against all of society because we were taught, that there's no such thing as magic, and we were taught that everything in matter is scientific and controlled, and we were taught we did not have that kind of the ability to shape our destiny in that way. So from a very early age, I was basically saying, oh no, yes, I suppose it's a form of arrogance, because I was saying, oh, I can and I will find a way to control my own life. And that came about for a multitude of reasons. However, the religious side of witchcraft, the rebellion for me was penetrating and discovering the real face of God. And I found that through the goddess. And I've spoken about it many times, that to my 15-year-old brain, that was an epiphany. It was from reading Raymond Buckland's complete book of witchcraft, that the idea was first seeded to me that God not only could be a woman, but had been in multitudes of cultures for thousands of years. Yeah. That this was something that had been erased from consciousness and history in the Western world. And so in that sense, I started rebelling against the illusion of Western society. And it is an illusion because it is a modern construct that is fading away. It needs to fade away.
It does.
Men are still in power, and men are still trying to suppress women.
Evidently, it's going on a lot right now. I think it's important to say, I think that I rebel against a lot of things, but I want people to understand that I get very tired, and this is a particularly me thing. Brian always says, I speak from my perspective. Well, I'll speak from mine here. I get real tired of the anti-Christian, constant people who only want to do that. They only want to piss off the church. They only want to piss off mommy and daddy. That's boring to me. I'm sorry. And also, I'm here to tell you, you're not paying attention if you think that a lot of the things you care about that are being whittled away are always at the feet of some old form of Christianity. The fact that we abuse Mother Earth and use her, you can justify that secularly. You don't need Christianity to do that. Tell me that the world is dead. There's no soul to it. It's just matter. I rebel against that. Tell me that women aren't sacred, that there's nothing important about it, that there's nothing important about it. We're fine. We're so past all that oppression. We're not. So I rebel against that. Tell me that human beings do not have the spark of the divine within them, so it's okay to use them. It's okay that, that they work in, mills and sweatshops and whatnot. No, I rebel against that. And I think the spiritual rebellion against that is useful. And if you're only left with a secular rebellion of, well, I think it's mean to do those things, well, why? Who cares? Tell that to late-stage capitalist barons. They don't care. So, I think that rebellion can be positive. I don't think that just, rebelling against, against what you were raised with, you need to go further than that.
There is a positive side of rebellion. Levi and I generally tend to agree on most subjects. However, I have a disagreement with you on this subject.
Tell me.
But, actually, I agree with everything you said. However, I'm having a disagreement with me probably based on the current political climate and thoughts I was having outside of the subject of witchcraft. Our president is absolutely being steered by the Christian right wing.
Oh, sure.
I do not think he believes in Christianity.
Me either.
But he's still willing to be controlled by it for political reasons. And kings, queens, and emperors have been allowing the church to have power over them for political reasons for a very long time now. We've never had a sitting president that was woman. And we've never had a sitting president that did not proclaim to be Christian.
That's true.
So it is still a part of our political climate, and a lot of what's going on now is influenced by radical fundamentalist church leaders who have lots of money and influence. So I do think that there's still a reason to rebel against those Christians.
Oh yeah, I mean politically,
it's not
yes.
the Catholic Church anymore. You know, it's not some of these other. You know, they've got their own problems. Witchcraft is not one of them.
No.
You know, there are. You know, where I think the true rebellion against the Church had its heyday was in medieval Europe. You know, that's a different subject altogether in a sense.
Rebel against the fact that they own the truth.
One of our favorite witchcraft, you know, pieces of literature is called The Charge of the Goddess, which comes in very many forms, from the Gardnerian versions to the Alexandrian. But originally it started out with Charles Godfrey Leland, and there's a line in it, if I can get it exactly right. And ye shall be free from slavery, and as a sign that ye be truly free, ye shall be naked in your rights, both men and women also. And after holding your supper thus, you shall extinguish the lights, having the game of Benevito, and this shall last until the last of our oppressors are dead.
Yeah.
This was written from a perspective of a cult, whether it was real or imagined, that was existing under the oppression of the church when it was legal to be a witch. Currently, right now, there is still, of course, persecution of witchcraft and alternative belief systems. In fact, in the United States, if you are anything out of the box right now, this is a bit of a scary time. So witchcraft may once again have that, you know, that in its future. But technically speaking, we're free at the moment, you know. So it's not as relevant as it was when you could be burned alive, hung, dismembered.
It's generally bad times. You know what I mean?
Yes, they can still fire you from your job. They can still take you to court. And I know people in my lifetime who had voodoo dolls used in their custody battles over their children. That this one woman in particular was making these fun voodoo sort of sex dolls, totally PC, you know. They were fun, and she was doing them for artistic, and she was going to try to sell them, and she was a witch, and her husband well knew she
used
was a witch,
it against her.
but he used that. It didn't do anything, but still, it was still brought before a judge. Yeah,
and we are still killing people in sub-Saharan Africa for the crime of
the
witchcraft
rest of the world,
too.
We also remember the West is the more liberal place.
Yeah, it's a different world, right?
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that. I do think, I don't want you to think that I'm saying that political Christianity is not still a problem. It is. I'm just saying when somebody comes to me on the spiritual path and they can't seem to get past that, I think that's an impediment to spiritual growth.
Oh, I agree.
Where that's all they want to do is just, you know, I have people who come in and here at the shop, and I realize that a lot of them are from rural places, and this is sort of a breath of fresh air, so I respect that, and I know they need that. But it's all they want to do is be like, back home, I'm the one that everybody, you know, and I'm like, I get that that's important for you because you don't have that outlet perhaps where you are. But spiritually, you're going to have to move past that, you know. Don't define yourself as from a negative ever. It's a horrible thing to do. Do not define yourself from a negative. If the very first thing out of your mouth when I say, what's your spirituality? Well, I'm not a Christian. It's like, okay, well, there's a lot of religions in the world, Chug. Like, that doesn't really tell me much, you know. I'm going to need a little bit more. So, you know, don't start from that.
Yes, we completely understand that there are people in certain areas of the world who are living in such a Christian environment that they feel that oppressed, and we understand that. However, there is an overarching anger towards Christianity, and the only objection I have to that, really, outside of we shouldn't persecute anyone for their spiritual beliefs just because we were persecuted, I think that if you really get involved in the craft, and especially if you get initiated, you have to transcend that.
You do.
And, you know, that's what Levi's saying, is that, you know, in the craft and in our teachings, I can speak to a Christian, and one of the favorite things I like to say to Christians is, you know, I do believe in God.
Same.
I used to be Christian when I was younger because that's how I was raised, and I never stopped believing in God. I simply changed my perspective of God. And there was never this breakaway of me to where I was like, I no longer believe in God, and then I found something else.
I did do that for a little while.
It was a transition for me of expanding my consciousness.
Here's another thing from the point of view of occultism. I have met a lot of people, actually, who completely cut themselves off from massive swaths of the Western occult tradition because of things like there are angels in it, or the Solomonic grimoires, or there's Hebrew in it, or there's biblical verses, and they're like, I'm not touching that. I'm not a Christian. I'm a pagan. It's like, okay, well, you've literally just eviscerated a giant chunk of the Western mystery tradition because of some words and because you can't get past an image. Like if you're claiming to be a witch or an occultist, you should be able to do that. You should be able to understand that you're wrong word, that you're dealing with something bigger than, a very, very 15th century, 16th century concept of something, right? You should be able to do that. And if not, I mean, you're missing out. You're missing out on a huge part of it.
We do have a question. Do you want to take it?
Which one? Do you think, so we have a question from YouTube that says, do you think rebellion interacts with ancestors, such as having conflicting views, or in terms of calling on ancestors of particular movements or identities? I think calling on ancestors and using ancestors in a form of rebellion is extremely important for oppressed groups. I think this is massively important. You see this, for example, there's a massive rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, unfortunately, and a lot of people are reclaiming Jewish identity. A lot of people who have been secularized and kind of quiet about it are reclaiming that. Or in the United States, the oppression of African Americans and reclaiming that as an ancestral spiritual lineage and reconnecting to the sort of roots and religious beliefs of ancestors. Absolutely, I think that's important. So if to fight against the oppression of a group that's really, really being put under by an oppressive regime, absolutely.
And whether or not your ancestors are actually technically involved, if they inspire you, then great, fine. I don't. I suppose witches, sometimes we think about those people who were persecuted and burned, hung and all that in the name of witchcraft, whether they were witches or not. We think about the pre-Christian peoples that were persecuted. We think of the destruction of Anglesey. These things come to mind.
The burning of the temples.
The destruction of the Library of Alexandria.
Putting out of the flame in Rome.
These things touch us and come to our minds. I personally, as a practitioner, don't necessarily think that everyone's sitting around in the afterlife waiting to care about what's happening to you. But in the end of the day, none of us know. But if they inspire you and it motivates you and you're honoring them, because I am one who honors my ancestors. I don't pray to them, or I'm not in an ancestral faith. The only part of that comes through is my initiatory ancestors, really. But I do honor my ancestors, the people that came before me. We are all products of them. We are what survived of them. None of them are dead because we're still living, we're still breathing, and
we carry them on.
We carry them on, and we carry. There's a reason why cultures survive in some extent. There's a reason why we know something about the Celts and we know something about the Egyptians. It's because that knowledge was supposed to be passed forward, into humanity. It was, some of these people wrote a lot down, and we have to be even more thankful for the ones who did not, that we know anything about them. Yeah.
One of the things that I think we're hitting on interesting is we keep talking about rebellion. Well, why do you rebel? Well, to be free, right? And it's in our charge, and it's in a lot of witchcraft liturgy pieces about freedom. And Maxine does this a lot when people say, what's so special about Alexandrian witchcraft? And she often lists freedom as one of the major things, right? What do you mean by that?
Freedom, beauty, and power.
Freedom, beauty, and power. What does it mean to be free? I'm asking you because
Are you asking me?
I am. What does it mean to be free?
To do your true will is to be free. If you have someone in your life who is keeping you from doing your true will, then you are not free.
Okay. I was really hoping you were going to say true will, and I was like, and you delivered like dominoes. Big fan.
I'm a brainwashed occultist.
You did.
By the
Well, you know what? You know why? You know who he met? True freedom's in the woods, children. Here's the thing. I'm going to be a little wordy here, so God forgive me. There are two types of freedom, There are two sort of concepts of freedom historically, right? There is freedom means I can do what I want. That's freedom. Okay, that's a very base definition of it, and it's actually quite modern too. I once heard a theologian, Christian theologian, say something that kind of shook me and has always stuck with me as an initiate of witchcraft. And he said, true freedom, because Calvinists believe in predestination, that you're predestined, you're very fatalistic. He said, true freedom is the freedom to become what you were meant to be. Like, true freedom is the freedom to become your true self. It is not simply, I can do what I want. I can do whatever I want whenever I want. It's like, that is a concept of freedom that is important, do what thou wilt, right? But the bigger concept of freedom is I am free to become my truest self. That is absolute freedom.
There are natural orders of things where you're not supposed to be free. You're not supposed to be free when you're being raised by your mother and your father. You're not supposed to be free, if you've got a boss, I want to address that one.
Mm-hmm.
No, that wasn't it. There was one here I wanted to address. Get back to that.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a job, you've got to, listen to your boss's orders. There's laws in the world. If you're in a coven, you've got to follow the instructions of the high priesthood. These are just natural orders. That's fine, but that's not what we mean by freedom. Witches are inherently against slavery.
Yes.
Oppression. That is not a part of the natural order. You can find dedication, discipline, and authority and hierarchy within nature. We've got it in the hives, we've got it in wolf packs, we've got it in animal herds.
The flock, right?
What you won't generally find is
the murder,
slavery and oppression, on that sort of, it's not really a part of nature's design. Although I am thinking of these weird little ants, but technically...
But it is unnatural.
There was a question up here. How do you move
Which one?
This one.
Yes.
Do you mind if I take that?
Yeah, so I'll read it and you want to answer it? So somebody asked, they read a book where it said that Wiccans see gods as metaphors for nature and that you can believe in real gods, but it does not matter. And it sounded like the book was being nonchalant, like we were talking about. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I think the book needs to be thrown in the garbage, first
Agreed.
of all. Now, first of all, I'll clarify that I never call myself a Wiccan. Do you?
No.
No. It's not a word that... I suppose there are some initiates that might use it, but generally we will say Wicca, or of the Wicca.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer the correct pronunciation, but we're not going to get into that. We call ourselves witches and we practice witchcraft. So any book that you've read called Wiccans is probably not written by initiates. If it was written by an initiate, I heavily disagree with them. And I have heard American initiates, and particularly, I'm not saying maybe it is in Britain too, this is who I heard it from, that the craft, it's the praxis that matters. I fundamentally disagree with that.
Same.
I'm not saying we think of our gods in the same way that some Christians think of their gods. I'm not thinking we do not have a complex philosophy about it. In the end of the day, we understand we do not completely understand. The human mind is not completely capable of fully understanding God. You can use the metaphor of Isis veiled and unveiled, looking beyond the veil. There's a part of God you can't see or understand. We realize that these rituals and these identities are symbols. However, we do believe that there are truths about them, that there's a consciousness behind them, and if they're not real in some way, they would have no power. And if you do not believe in something, it is not worth your time.
Yeah,
you would never
foolish.
If you're practicing magic and you're trying to draw upon energy, you have to at least believe that what you're working with has real energy, real power. Sure, I suppose, you could say, well, the goddess is the moon. Well, we all know that the moon is a rock floating around the earth. It does have power, though. It has actual light that reflects off of it. So scientifically,
controls the tides.
It does have power. It does affect our gravity. It affects a lot of things in nature. However, does it literally have a spirit? I don't know. If there are spirits, why can't they inhabit a rock? People have been believing in that rock for so long that it would become a vessel, like a talisman anyway. So, I personally believe the gods I work with have potent powers and that they have a consciousness. It is not a human consciousness. I don't believe the god and the goddess are floating around on clouds, having conversations and playing with us with chessboards like in Clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there is a very real consciousness and spirit behind it. And I think if you have sterile gods, I don't understand how you can have fertile magic.
Well put.
If you're just drawing upon the powers of nature and why are you going to play make-believe? If you're like, oh, my god represents grass and I get my power from the grass. Well, why just not have a god at all? Just work with the grass.
Yeah.
I don't get it. So
I love that idea, though. I'm outside in the grass and I found God.
I find it to be that most people who do that are doing it because they are creating an excuse to sort of validate why they have conflicting practices.
Sure.
You know, and so if they're, for instance, if they're working in one religious system and another that actually inherently conflict with each other, then they say, oh, as long as I'm doing the practice right in this one and doing the practice right in this one,
it's a wonderful cop-out.
Then I'm fine. They don't want to face the fact that they don't actually believe in either one of them, or they wouldn't be doing it because they're conflicting belief systems. That's my opinion.
So we have 2 questions I want to hit on, and feel free to weigh in too, but I really want to take one of them. Tina says, do you think the reason that God gave the commandment of having no other gods before him and he is a jealous God is because he wants us to be docile the way Christianity seems to want us to be? First of all, history is very complicated. At one point, Christians were a rebellious religion popular amongst really oppressed groups that was fighting against a pagan elite that had a lot of money and power that tortured them.
They were a mystery cult.
Yes, they were a mystery cult. And so... No. Do I think, and first of all, this is, you're using a quote that comes from the 10 Commandments, which is the Hebrew scriptures, so Christianity inherited that. It's not their, they didn't originate it.
From the Torah.
It's from the Torah. So so no, I don't think that Christianity or Judaism necessarily wants you to be docile inherently. I mean, look at the history of the Maccabees against the Romans, and there's a long history of rebellion in both of those religions. So no. Do I think Christianity wants you to be docile now? No. Look at the way these evangelicals foam at the mouth and try to win elections and whatnot. I don't think I don't think they're looking for docile.
Yeah.
Just don't. And then the other one that I wanted to address was Douglas said something, and I do recognize this, Douglas. He says, you keep speaking about rebellion, and then you suggest that those of us, and so he's identifying with this, that have our reasons for totally disconnecting from the images of Christianity and other repressive religions are losing out. I have to disagree. Okay.
Hold on a second. Douglas, first of all, I think you've greatly misunderstood.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you can't.
No. I think what we're saying is, because I don't have a hang-up about Christianity any longer, other than some of the belief systems that are promoted by some Christians.
Yeah, fundamentalism, cruelty, homophobia, sure.
I don't spend my time in the universe of Christians. When I first started stepping onto the craft, I was still a little bit afraid of hell because I was raised Christian. Now it seems like it was lifetimes ago, and the concept just really doesn't enter into my mind. I do not use Christian symbols within my practice at all. Not symbols that I would consider Christian. However, I don't spend my time thinking about it until they try to step on my laws.
Sure. I love Christian symbolism. I have a lot of Virgin Mary statues, because she's the goddess to me.
Well, they got that from us.
They did. So, I like Christian imagery. But here's what I'll have 2 things, Douglas, that I'll say. Number one is, it's like a fish trying to say, I hate the water, I'll never be in the water, you can't make me like water. We were born in Christendom. It's a thing.
We're still in it.
We're still in it. It's died as a political unity, the way that it used to be under the aegis of the church, right? But culturally, my God, Christmas, Easter, if you, and I don't know where you're from, but if you were raised in the Western world, in a predominantly Christian world, you are a product of that, right? And so how you deal with that will be important. You can't pretend that it didn't happen. Right, you have to sort of deal with it. And just doing this, I don't necessarily think is always the best way. The second thing I'll say is this: repressive religions. That would be all of them.
There are a lot of them.
I get really upset when people try to play this game of who hurt who the most. And so the big baddie of the Catholic Church with their pretty outfits and their crosses.
All organized religion.
Yeah, let me tell you, if you think Buddhism gets a free pass, then you need to go talk to the Zen Buddhists that supported Japanese imperialism, or to what goes on in Sri Lanka against Tamil Hindus. If you think Hinduism is great, then you need to learn about Hindu nationalism, because it's pretty brutal. When if you think that, we could go on and on. There is no religion that, when given power, has not flexed it, right? So this idea that there's a bad list of religions and a good list of religions, and I won't be on the bad one. Well, good luck finding it.
That's
because
people.
If they're people are bad, right? And yes, ideologies are bad too, but there's no escape. Right?
There was something I wanted to add to the 10 Commandment thing very quickly. I had seen this on a documentary that was very good. I think it was called God Has a Wife. I wish I had more information. It's very good. It was an extremely well done documentary that's now extremely hard to find. However, that's not really relevant. The point that I want to bring is that there was a certain point in history that they believed that the people we now call the Jewish people, or the Hebrews of the Bible, were actually basically Canaanites. They were the same thing. And there was a movement, a religious cult movement within them, which created a faction for the one God.
Yep, a lot of people believe this.
And that religion, that's where that commandment comes from, is because that was an essential part of their movement, and they were coming out of polytheism, and so they were rebelling against polytheism because that was the old guard that they were rebelling about. And that is, they think, the reason why early on in the Bible you have so much conflict between the Jews and the Canaanites. And we can see this by the fact that the Bible, in all of its translations, actually uses a lot of Canaanite names for God.
Yep.
A lot.
El is a Canaanite name for God.
Yes. And then for the devil, Baal. Baal and Ale are the same thing.
I know, it's very, it's a whole thing. I agree with you, though, that their Jewish henotheism became monotheism later. And the other thing about that is theology has been around for a very, very long time. And people, if you think every Christian and every Jew and every Muslim is a fundamentalist, you're wrong. I'm sorry. And there is a library of beautiful, very deep theology. For example, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Okay, on face value, that is a cheap, our God's a mean God, you can't worship any other ones or he's going to hurt you. Okay? There is a mountain of theology, in Jewish theology in particular, that has a very specific reason why would God say that, because it teaches people they're not the center of the universe. It's a way to deflate the ego, not to make you weak and docile, but to open you up a little bit. And the Kabbalah alone has an entire concept of that that's pretty beautiful. So again, scratch the surface and you'll find something a little bit deeper.
I'm not sure how you say his name, but Luke. Levi speaks fluent French.
Si tu veux demander la question en français, tu peux, je parle français. Donc c'est pas un problème. Donc tu peux écrire en français. But Luke, who is from French, I just let him know that if he wants to write in French, and if any of you want to write in French
or Spanish. You can call in and Levi can translate for
you can write in French or you can write in Spanish. I speak both. But somebody said...
French is an extremely sexy language. So
merci, moi je la trouve très sexy aussi.
Yeah. They could be saying horrible things about you, and it still sounds good.
I know, right? I could say horrible things about Patrick, and I mean about
slip,
trouble. I could say horrible things about Brian in French, and he would think it was beautiful. But no, Luke actually did ask a real question, which was, and Douglas says, sehr gut, mein Herr, ja, ich spreche Deutsch auch. Mein Deutsch ist nicht so gut als mein Französisch, aber ich kann verstehen.
Right, knock all that off.
I know, right?
Anyway,
I'm just showing off at this point.
He is showing off.
Luke did say, it's kind of out of left field, but the Baphomet, some people say it's just an icon, but it reminds me of the god and the goddess together. What are your opinions on the Baphomet?
Well, yes, most people will say the Baphomet is not a god, it is an occult concept, which I believe that is the way that Eliphas Levi.
Eliphas Levi.
Yeah, I always say it weird. I used to always say, it doesn't matter. But Eliphas Levi says, put it forth as an occult concept. It is an occult concept, however, no one can tell you what a god is. If you feel drawn to worshipping something, it's not anyone's place to tell you not to do it. I think it's got a history. It is a powerful image. Mm-hmm. I do feel like that imagery contains everything we say about the god and the goddess of the witches. And it also contains everything we do in craft. What his inspiration was for designing it, and, was it the tarot card devil? I don't know. Levi might have a take on that. But I do think it's an extremely potent, powerful symbol that has made its way into the occult, witchcraft, and other magical practices. In fact, it's used in voodoo or something like that.
They use it in certain voodoo things. I think, to me, the Baphomet is the macrocosm. Animal, man, above, below, woman, man. I said that twice. But it's all of those things coming together. It's alchemical, solve et coagula, destroy and rebuild. To me, it's a concept of the very, very traditional Western occult teaching that as within, so without. What is below is it's the Emerald Tablet. So to me, that's what it is. Where he got it from is a very complicated thing that we don't have enough time to go through today, because it comes from, Knights Templar stuff and mythology about who they were worshipping, and it's a whole thing.
My favorite.
But I do love the image.
There's even that Egyptian god, they think it bin.
Oh yeah, there's a whole thing.
However, my favorite interpretation of the word Baphomet is that in Greek, Baphometis means baptized by wisdom, if I'm saying it right. I don't know if we don't know if that's really a connection, but I've always sort of thought maybe it is.
I think it comes from me historically. I believe that Eliphas Levi got it from the history of the Crusaders who were in the Templars, who were accused of worshiping Baphomet, which most people think was ignorant Christians misinterpreting the word Muhammad. Like, I think there's a whole history there, but it doesn't matter. It's become something else.
It's unlikely in my mind that, in my imagination, it's very unlikely that those Knight Crusaders would have adopted Muhammad.
No, I don't think they did at all.
They would have known Greek.
Some of them,
and they would have believed in baptism. You know,
yeah.
So
I don't think they were doing it at all. I think the Knights Templar were murdered for money,
and power.
And power. It was the King of France and the Pope decided, hey, you've got a lot of money.
They were basically the true church at that point in time, and France.
And they had a lot of money, and it was a problem.
That Pope was controlled by the French king.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
So
so completely political. I'm not saying they really did it or not. Who knows?
But I love the image and the egregore behind it and what it's become. And I have a lot of Baphomet images that I use a lot because when I look at it, it is jarring because it's like human, animal. Well, I'm both. I'm greater than my animal self, but I'm chained by it. You know, in Kabbalistic terms, I am my animal soul, I'm my rational soul, I'm my divine soul. So I like it. I think it's very useful.
Right, let me ask you a question.
Ask away.
Oh, actually, we haven't had any discussion about this, so I'm not going to do that one yet, because the conversation is not going that way. What is more powerful, dedication or rebellion?
Dedication.
Why? He was waiting for me to say why.
I was like, well, why is dedication more powerful than rebellion? Because rebellion is a fire starter, but then eventually, what happens afterwards? What do you build? Look at the history of rebellious movements like the Paris Commune or a lot of other things in history where the rebellion was there and great, and then it was squashed because there was no dedication. If you can light the fire, but you can't keep putting the sticks on it to feed it, the fire goes out. Period. Like, so rebellion is necessary. Don't think that I'm some fuddy-duddy, some fuddy-duddy who doesn't believe in it, but you have to feed it. And that is dedication.
Very nostalgic, and I hope no one gets mad at me for saying this.
What?
But in Alexandrian craft, I kind of feel like... No, I shouldn't say it, should I? Well, I've already gone this far.
You already went.
I feel like Alex was the rebellion and Maxine was the dedication.
Yes, and...
I don't know.
No,
sorry,
I agree with you. I don't think that's... You're not being mean about either
Alex
of them.
Wasn't
no.
dedicated.
Or that Maxine wasn't rebellious. They're both. But... It goes back to this. Here's an example to take it into history that people out here might know. King Henry VIII broke from the church to get a divorce and really didn't do much else, right? He was not a great man in many ways. It took Elizabeth creating a functional church. You know, who is it? Eddie Izzard, the comedian Eddie Izzard, has that great joke where he goes, and then Elizabeth come along and we're like, oh, some morals. Thank God we've got some morals.
Is that the gay guy that's...
Yeah, Eddie Izzard. He's not gay, but... But that whole thing is like a lot of people did.
He looks like a homosexualist. Right?
He looks like a homosexualist. But no, dedication matters. So again, great for the rebellion, but somebody's eventually got to see it through.
Hopefully I didn't insert my mouth on that. It's my imagination
Maybe.
sometimes.
If he did, I would like to say that I am officially my own degree now, and I don't have to be like...
Announce that so soon. But since he has, congratulations.
Thank you.
Levi is an Alexandrian high priest now.
I am.
So I no longer outrank him technically.
Technically.
Just in every other way.
Have another cherry.
Have another cherry, Brian. No.
He's going to kill me
I'm
now.
a bishop now. No.
Yes, he is a bishop. And
I'm
actually,
a bishop. I get a pointy hat, I get a ring.
That actually goes into something I was going to ask before we take another question. In craft, Alexandrian craft in particular, there's a lot of choices we made because we did see control within other witches.
Yeah.
Alex saw control in other witches, and so he was like, that's too controlling. We don't need that,
Agreed.
And I think it's something that we struggle with in the craft today. I think all of the craft, Gardnerian and Alexandrian, and ourselves included, struggle with this dedication versus rebellion. Especially American witches, I think, because...
We're inherently rebellious,
we are told
individualistic.
since we were little children, you can be whatever you're going to be. You can be the president, you can be an astronaut, you could be a doctor. I'm told that's not that way in Britain.
No, and it goes back. So, Eddie Izzard has that great joke where he says, "Look, you're British. Tone it down a little."
Yeah. So it's cultural in that sense. We were raised to say no one's better than you. You can be as good as you can. I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, rugged individualism
creates delusions sometimes.
And poverty.
Poverty is
just
a delusion. Anyway, in the craft, you said it best that we don't have a pope, we do not have an authority figure. You know, some lines make big deals about witch queens. We had a witch king at one point in time.
We did.
But, you know, generally the teaching and craft is every coven is autonomous and we should all mind our own business, basically.
Yeah.
You know, when do you think upline should intercede? Or when or if do you think upline should intercede with their downline? Is there a time when they should say? When do the bishops speak out against another bishop? And when should they mind their own business? And it should be done in private, I would say.
Always in private. Okay. Abuse, number one.
If
abuse.
A public proclamation against another leader of a group, I think, is
problematic.
I think it is problematic because it puts yourself in a pope-like position.
Yes.
I've done it myself, so I'm not critiquing. We lose our tempers. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it again. But
forewarning.
But, you know, well, there's an exception to that if they won't communicate with you.
Yeah, you can always dress things behind closed doors.
If they won't talk to you and they're not willing to negotiate, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So abuse is number one for me. If downline is being abusive, then you call them out and you say, this is not witchcraft, this has nothing to do with the faith, they're abusive. 2, if they are flagrantly doing things that violate our laws, our belief systems, and you've told them, hey, this isn't really craft, you know, in the system that you were initiated into, and they still do it, then I think it's perfectly fine to come out and say, yeah, this person's full of crap, you know, or this person's not being honest.
And we're not talking stand on your left foot.
No, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about, they touched it with this hand and not that sign.
We're talking about
fundamentally different things. Like you have to pay me to be initiated. That's a problem.
I gotta get on that soapbox when you're done here.
Yeah. But so yeah, in those cases I think it's okay for upline and for elders to come out and to say that's not okay.
So this has nothing to do with the topic, but it's come up so many times. I don't know how many initiates are out there watching, but there has been this persistent question that has come up since my initiation many years ago to the present day, this rumor. And I know the rumor is, here's the whole thing in Christianized world and probably Maxine's world and anyone who's known's world, the same rumors keep rearing their heads over and over again. And it doesn't matter how many times you address it.
Like that one about the trucker.
It doesn't matter about, that's your rumor, darling. It doesn't matter what you say. It keeps coming up. And it really doesn't bother me so much. However, I had a thought about this the other night because I've had many initiates come forward and say, did you pay for your initiation or did Christian pay? I had that once happen.
Yeah.
Long after I was an Alexandrian high priest, somebody said, I heard Christian paid $3,000 for an Alexandrian initiation.
Okay.
I'm like, you do know I'm an Alexandrian high priest? Oh, yes. So do you really think I couldn't get something arranged? And at the time, he was not an initiate, so it was even doubly ridiculous.
Yeah, it's silly.
Just a rumor. I want to ask not only the general public, but initiates everywhere, does anyone have an actual historic example of any Gardnerian or Alexandrian high priest or high priestess charging for initiation ever?
I don't think it exists.
Because I don't have an example of that. I've never heard of it because it's one of our fundamental laws that we would never do that. So any Alexandrian or Gardnerian high priest or high priestess who charge for initiation, that would be a case where the bishops would come down on them hardcore, and they would be ostracized from any community they're in. And I would feel the same way. It's so fundamentally against it.
We do not charge for initiation.
I find it very shocking that any initiate would deign to even think this was a possibility.
We do not do it.
However, if somebody knows some story about someone who was actually initiated charging for initiations, please tell me and I can be enlightened. But until then, put your head on your shoulders and shut up.
Okay, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been fun. No. Okay, so somebody did
I had that soapbox with me for days and you reminded me.
Girl, it's been there. I feel it. Okay, he's been drinking. So someone asks, has dedication ever been a form of rebellion for you? Yes, that's what I was talking about at the beginning. And somebody followed up by dedication loses its appeal in today's world of microwave witchcraft.
I think for Levi it is a form of rebellion.
It is. I am rebelling against this boring-ass secular world. Screw it. Like, you know, I cannot stand. You got on a soapbox, girl, step down. Like, let me get on mine for 1 second. My least favorite thing about the modern world is that nonchalance is cultural capital. What do I mean by that? The more detached you are, the cooler you are. Yeah, I went there. I didn't know. It was cool. What? I have friends who have been to places like frickin' Phuket, Thailand, and they'll come back like, it's great. Yeah, I loved it. It's nice. I might go back. Like, there's just no passion for anything anymore in our generation. It's a millennial thing. I get it. We're nihilistic. We inherited a horrible economy. Damn you, baby boomers, et cetera, et cetera. But, like, sir, ma'am, have a frickin' opinion every now and then about something besides the Netflix show that you're binging. Like, you've got to have more than that. I am on a soapbox right now because it's like, it's endemic lately of just, I don't know. I just don't want to commit. I'm just trying. Good for you. Good. You're going to be doing that till you're 60.
I'm solitary.
Gross.
I don't need to be initiated. I'm solitary. I'm not telling.
Do you know the further I get along in my initiation, I have more fun arguing and having good conversations with like crazy lunatic Christians and like really hardcore like devout Orthodox Jews than I ever do with like your average Tom, Dick, or Harry off the street who's just like, oh my God, did you watch the second season of? No, I didn't, and I don't care. Like.
I have had great evenings with a vampire who
starting out a little weird.
Dated the daughter of Gerald Gardner, and I knew he was completely full of it, but it was at least entertaining.
Exactly, it's more fun.
And he was
crazy
nice,
people are fun.
Nice to look at, which helped. Yeah.
No, but I agree. So that is a form of rebellion. And like I said earlier, if you live in a rural place in America, yes, it is you are rebelling against the Christian church. You are rebelling against conservative Christian values. But let's say you're in, I don't know, Seattle, New Orleans. I know, right? You're in New Orleans or whatever, and you're surrounded by people who are moderately liberal, secular humanists. They're all in open relationships. They're all kind of bored with life. Then the devout traditionalist is the rebellion. Like, you are the rebel, right? If you are just like everybody else at Starbucks on a Tuesday, how is that rebellious? You're rebellious because you signed a petition on change.org. Good for you.
And real rebellion has to come from your conscience. It's only real rebellion if it comes from your conscience.
Exactly. Believe it.
I don't think rebelling just so that I'm not going to be told what to do. I'm not going to do what anyone says. I'm going to do what I want. I don't think that's really rebellion is about. It's about challenging something that's defined, righteous rebellion is about challenging something that's defined from your conscience. Like Alex, deciding we don't need to bash ourselves in the head all the time.
Agreed. Lisa said something, you could not have been more perfect in the way you put this, Lisa. Passion and dedication is considered almost like a form of hysteria today. You're right. It's kind of like, for example, I have friends who will say, well, I realize that the alt-right's bad, but calling them Nazis seems a little extreme. No, it's not. It's what they are, right? And you have to be passionate about the truth. Like, you cannot, this wishy-washy, consistent adoration of the middle ground. There's actually a fallacy if you take logic classes or debate classes or in law school called the fallacy of the golden mean. And what it is that the right answer is always in the middle. No, sugar, sometimes people are wrong. And you should vaccinate your kids or you should not vaccinate your kids. Well, let's just meet in the middle. No. There's such a thing as right and wrong. There's such a thing as, good and bad. Like, and this consistent, attempt to just evade the question, I think is gross.
There's still time to call in. Please call it.
Sexy witches are waiting for you to call in.
504-252-0391.
That voice is very alarming. Like, hi, what are you wearing? We charge extra if you want us to get weird. So hold on, I missed a couple there because I went on a rant. Apologize. I have a thing against modernism. My friends know this.
This show is very weird, and
this show's gotten a little weird.
I think we've gone all over the place.
No, we're still hitting it though. Rebellion versus dedication. That's what we're talking about.
None of our shows.
A lot of people are saying they agree with me. Good, because I'm right.
We've only disagreed on one little thing.
We don't disagree about a lot. Well. So, I'm sorry I've missed a couple
Have you ever felt oppressed as an initiate?
As an initiate?
Yeah.
No.
Have you ever felt oppressed?
No, I claim my power.
Yeah.
The ground on which I stand is holy ground because I stand on it. So, no.
I have also never felt oppressed as an initiate. I have had moments where I think people thought they might be able to, and they quickly learned that was not the case. But that's not about ego. That's about I do own my own space as well.
Yeah.
And everyone in our coven is like that. We do have a hierarchy. We do have a high priest and high priest, and we have high priesthood. Mm-hmm. And we are, there's discipline within our group, and there's, rules and operations that we adhere to, and that everyone agrees to adhere to. But the reality of the situation is everyone's involved because they chose to be involved. No one's forced to be there. No one has to stay.
You come and go of your own conscience.
So it's not. It's only organized by the natural order of things. And I think that is the way that the religious witchcraft system of priesthood was developed to be. I think that groups that carry that on to where I find that witchcraft groups that try to control their downlines too much are always headed for extinction.
They choke it out, absolutely. You have to give things room to grow.
Ego is not a bad thing. It's not a good thing either. It's neither, because it is both good and bad. There's healthy ego and there's destructive ego. And we're all wrestling with it. Yeah. Everyone. No person on this earth has totally transcended their negative ego. We all have it.
I feel like Dolly Parton is very close.
She might be.
I just feel that in my soul.
Initiates, I think, struggle with it more than anyone else because we're forced to face it, because of that, I think that's why it's genius that we have to let go. That if you go run your own coven, what's going on there is none of my business. And if you ask me for advice, I'm, of course, as a brother, I'm going to give it to you. But if one of your students came to me, well, what are you doing?
Yeah, we don't do that.
No.
You don't meddle.
No.
When they come to you, you're like, Levi beats us and makes us worship the devil.
Well, you get a phone call.
I love that that's all. Hey, I heard a story. Just checking.
Have you been doing this again?
Have you been doing that again? We talked about this. We talked about this a lot. No, I'm kidding.
I love the checks and balances, and I do think it's great that we do have a high priesthood community. Our elders are fantastic, and they are great resources, and they don't meddle. Yeah. They offer advice. They're honest people. They're
to a fault.
Very honest people.
To a fault.
And I love them, and I'm grateful to them in more ways than I can possibly express, and I'm very proud to be, under their wing then and now. Some of my favorite people in the world, but definitely not shy.
No. Yeah, we've got some people saying that they're initiates and they've never heard of anyone charging for it, so just back in there for that, because it doesn't happen.
I can't believe anyone's even... I can see a non-initiate asking that
question. It's so foreign to our religion. It's just very foreign.
It's coming from the ATR system.
Yeah, they do that.
Convinced of it.
Which we just don't do. No judgment.
It's not a criticism. It's just... That is something they do, and they have their reasons. They're a completely different religion. Yeah. It's not something we do. It's not something we've ever done, and I've never heard of it being done. Now, if Levi would paid me for his initiation, not that I initiated him, but if he would have paid Christine for his initiation would still be valid, even though he paid for it.
Yeah.
However, Christine be really messed up, and
she'd be in trouble.
And yes, all the other bishops would probably...
I love how he's already just picked that up, the bishops.
I love it. It's a great...
We're Episcopalians.
Because the early church didn't have a pope, it had lots of
bishops. The Council of Bishops, it actually really is a good symbol for how hierarchies work, right? The bishop has his own diocese, but...
It would never fly. It wouldn't be Levi's fault. It would be whoever did it's fault.
I want to dress do you remember, speaking of bishops, you know what I'm going to get? Do you remember Rihanna at the Met Gala a year ago when she was the Diamond Pope? Do you remember this? It was last year's Met Gala. That's what I'm here for, bishop-wise. Yeah. Stop kissing. Nobody's kissing. What an odd question.
And that's the other soapbox. Never blame the initiate, people.
No.
Blame the initiator.
Yeah, people get taken...
If you're going to have an issue with how something was done, whether it's, whether you think they should have been, or whether the lineage was proper or not.
Don't blame the poor person.
Don't blame the person who got it, because that happened to me, where a lot of people blame me for some stuff I was told I had.
No, people just hate you.
It's fine. I didn't make it up. I was actually told that way. Somebody else made it up. Nobody went to that person. They all came to me.
To you, yeah. So somebody, I did skip one a second back that I wanted to get for was, excuse me. They all came at once. Okay. So this person was talking about how you can get the first, second, and thirds quickly, right? In some traditions. So I think that'd be a good segue into talking...
In what traditions?
They didn't specify.
Well, can I take this for a second?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. like, I thought you might want to talk about, like, what do degree systems mean when it comes to hierarchy, rebellion, dedication, time, all that?
The first, second, and third degree system is actually extremely old. You can find it in the Masons. You can find it in a lot of orders that branched off from the Masons. You can find it in the European cult of Isis. It is something that is a really old system. However, generally speaking, when we're talking about witchcraft, it belongs to Gardnerians and Alexandrians. Some other traditions have adopted it, but not many. But some have. And some of those traditions are valid in their own right. You know, it's who you choose to trace from. They're not connected to us. They don't go back to England. You know, an American system that was formed independently that uses our stuff. I'm not saying it's fine as long as everyone's honest, but it's its own thing. There are other systems that have initiations that are not 3 degrees, but if you're speaking about Alexandrian Gardnerian initiations, there's a lot of different ideas about that. So the point of the matter is the person has to have gone through all 3. You know, I've gone through multiple initiations in different ways. Very long story there. So of others, whether someone's given their first, second, and third degree a year and a day apart, whether they're given them all in one day, whether or not they're given their second and third at the same time, is all really irrelevant. It's whether or not it actually happened by a proper person. Now, is that a best practice? That depends on who you talk to. It's situational. However, the Book of Shadows and our teachings do not actually specify any of that. That comes down to human control. How can I make what you had better or worse based on my experience or my opinions? The reality situation, that all comes down to best practice. I don't think it's a really good idea to zip most people up, but there have been people zipped up, including myself at one point in time, who it was fine. Because what happened with me is my initial Alexandrian initiations were a zip-up, as people like to call it, and a lot of people were very critical of that. And I was very thankful when Maxine came out and let everyone know that, you know, hers were all done in the same way. What's interesting from my experience, however, is that even though I was zipped up, the magic found a way. After that, I went to a new teacher, and I didn't think about it till much later. The course of study that I took under this new tutelage and a new lineage that I moved into was a course of 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, so it happened the way it happened. Somebody else once said, you get the initiation you deserve, or the initiation
God
you
help
needed.
us. Yeah.
For whatever reason, I think that it was supposed to happen in New Orleans when it was supposed to happen, and the craft will use anyone to survive. So I think I was a pawn of the gods as much as anyone else is. But it worked out. I didn't get to slack off. I still had to study. I'm still studying. Yep. You know, I've been running a coven here in New Orleans since 2014. And I have magnificent students, but guess what? I don't know it all, and I'm still studying, and I'm still asking my elders questions. And I'm still, you know,
Well, you want it to be a lifelong journey.
It is. You can't escape it.
No, that's dedication, right? Starts with a rebellion, but
so
you keep it going.
Did I derail the question?
No, you're good.
Good.
Actually, you answered it. He said, you know, thank you for the interesting viewpoint. So, ask me a question.
I'll ask you a question.
Just took him off guard.
No, you were just quick. When should a witch question authority?
Always.
That would have been my answer.
Always. You always question authority. It doesn't mean that you don't spit in its face constantly, but you always question it.
And challenge are not the same thing.
Exactly. You always question it. Like, you always say, do I think this is valid? Where's this coming from? You know, we're not sheep. God, no.
The little kid that says why is probably going to make a good witch.
But, yeah, absolutely. I think you always question authority. And I think you also question taboos, and you question the why of rules. You know, you always do. That makes you a good, you know, person in general, not just a great witch, but, you know, makes you a clever person. You have to always ask the why. So yeah, always. Yeah.
I thought we'd get call. Why does Christian get call-ins and video call-ins and no one ever wants to talk?
Well,
to
we
us?
literally have just kept saying the.
Is it because we're long-winded?
Hold on. if you would like to call in, I am going to post, I think I can, maybe. I don't use Mac a lot, which confuses me.
Oh.
No.
Well, I can do it, but I wouldn't do it the way you're doing it.
What is it, command?
Well, I just go there.
Command copy, right? No. Mm-mm.
Oh.
No.
Oh, that's the search bar.
Yeah,
Don't let me touch it.
I was about to say, let's not let you do that, just first of all.
So let me help you. I'm going to the search bar.
Hold on.
So while Levi's doing that, putting in the number, I don't know. I think that one thing I want to say or want to put out to the craft in this...
Remember, give us a little shout out if you do want to do that.
In this segment is there are too few of us to fall out. And of course we're going to fall out. Is that
I hate most people in
as
this
Alex
religion.
said, we're talking about witches, not people. As Alex said, witches are a quarrelsome lot, and this is true.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone wants the microphone, and everyone wants the magic wand, and everyone wants to be heard. There's nothing wrong with that. You wouldn't be a witch if you were not a powerful person, on some level. So, but I do agree with it. There's too few of us to fall out. So I think before we judge a book by its cover, or someone else's initiation, or whatever it's going to be. Do you know what bothered me about that?
Tell me.
It wasn't actually anything to do with me. And Christian knows this because actually we had this thing a long time ago. He's had his attacks, and he used to always say, "This doesn't bother you. One day they're going to come at you, and it's going to bother you." This has probably been the biggest onslaught I've personally received, next to my original initiation, my original Alexandrian initiation, and it didn't bother me at all. I ignored it for several weeks, and he tried to tell, I don't care. Eventually, the human curiosity got the best of me, and I peeked and looked a little bit. But, he's like, "This really doesn't bother you?" And I said, "No, it doesn't."
No.
It would bother me if,
if no one cared.
I had some elders that did not particularly like the picture, but guess what? I was expecting that. I thought, "Oh, they're not going to like the cover." But, I also knew they loved me, and it wasn't going to be a big thing. It was just going to be their
you take care of your own, right?
If it would have been me doing something extremely inappropriate.
But I mean, like, solidarity.
There were lines, but there was nothing that weird. It was just, did you like it or not? No, I would have done something a little different. That's fine. Yeah. That doesn't bother me. It's to be expected. But, I'm also working from a different angle. But, I think that what bothered me the most was, I don't think whether we're talking about the occult community, the witchcraft community, the pagan community, I find it shocking that anyone would, and I suppose I do this in some ways myself, so I'm being a bit of a hypocrite, but anyone would make it about aesthetics. Who cares?
I make everything about aesthetics.
Well, so do I, which is what
I was about to say, this is ironic.
But what I mean by that is judging someone because they are wearing eye makeup.
Oh, no, I don't give no.
Or, are we all supposed to look like hippies? Are we not supposed to initiate someone that wears eye makeup? It's
an odd thing to
It's a bit judgmental
in the grand scheme
for a witch, I think.
But it would get celebrated in the secular world.
Yes.
2 questions here. Someone said, how have you dealt with the drive and energy to be dedicated whilst handling work, personal matters, the time it takes to do this? So, how do you juggle that? How do you juggle the time it takes to be dedicated to a religious path like ours and the real world? First of all, homegirl don't live in the real world. I get calls from him at 4 a.m. Sometimes it's like, "Oh, I forgot you have a job." And I'm like, "Yes,
I have a job.
I do." That doesn't let me keep vampire hours either.
I've never called you at 4 a.m. I don't think.
Oh my God. Yeah, somebody on here said, "I hope the Met Gala gets an occult theme. Can we please?" When it was the church theme, I was so here for it. When Janelle Monáe was a
Levi
priest.
is a bit correct that I have been blessed and or cursed that my entire life revolves around the craft in some way. My business is not the craft of the initiate, although we do sell books written by initiates and materials created by initiates, and we have initiates that read, so that's there. People who identify with magical communities, we do business with them. That has a spiritual side as well, because it allows us to actually promote those beliefs, concepts, ideas, and creative thoughts. So there's extremely a positive motivator behind it. Neither one of us does it for the money, don't get me wrong, we like being successful, we like being rich, we're not going to apologize for that, but us being successful and rich enables us to do that. If we wanted to use religion to make money, we'd both go to Jesus.
That is 100% what I always tell people.
We could make so much money if we went on tour.
And you give up the gay thing too.
We used to be gay.
Right. We used to be gay devil worshippers. Now we love Jesus. You could rake the money in.
Can you see me doing that? Yes.
Yes, actually I can.
In a very
but oh my God.
way.
I mean, I don't think you could handle that.
I'd be lying the whole time. I'd be like Cartman. You don't know anything about Christianity. I know enough to exploit it.
Exactly.
I'd be using glamour spells.
I could not imagine Brian up there in like pleated khaki pants and a sweater vest being like, I was touched by the Lord.
I'd probably still dress the same.
Okay, they're not going to let you do that. Like, there are rules.
In any case, I think that it's the judgment that I found very shocking. By
from other witches,
by people who identify with these counterculture communities.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? You're going to comment? I mean, some of the comments I thought was hilarious. Somebody said I looked like a mummy. And I laughed, because I could see what they were saying.
We have a call-in.
Oh, calling. Let's go.
Do you want to answer? Shall we? I don't know who this is, so if it's somebody just screaming that we need to get saved, that's going to happen.
You can hang up. Hello, you're live with Covendom.
Welcome to Covendom.
Hey, this is Douglas Helvey watching you folks from down here in New Bern, North Carolina.
Hi.
I do have a question for you.
Okay.
In the aspect of you're currently talking about dedication, or have been in the last couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious if in your part of the country, well, actually, when I say your part of the country, you have talking about both Christians' neck of the woods, i.e. New England, and down there now where you are, Brian, down there in NO. Do you see a lot of people that, quote, end up dedicating to either your particular form of your Alexandrian Wicca or other things, witchcraft that you've been involved in, and then all of a sudden everything else is more important, and all of a sudden that dedication that they swore by is they've got too much of this going on or too much of that?
Like
I'm wondering if you've seen a lot of that yourself. I've seen a lot of it in my tradition up here in North Carolina.
Not within our coven. I've been very fortunate that the members who have been initiated into the New Orleans coven have all chosen to be strictly Alexandrian. And although we may have magical leanings or practices that are a bit outside of the coven, that's just magical work. Somebody might be a bit more into ceremonial magic or angelics or conjure or, Egyptian magic. That's all very personal. They're personal magics. But as far as actually being involved in other groups or traditions, no. I've been very blessed and whether that's the vetting process or whatever it is, no, I have not experienced that yet. I have not had anyone leave the group. I have not had anyone quit being Alexandrian. I have not had anyone jump ship so far. It's okay if they do. In Alexandrian witchcraft, we say, you can come and go as your conscience dictates. Yep. So, they are free people. They're free beings. They came here for whatever reason they came. But no, I have not experienced that so far. However, I have seen in the social climates of the magical community that a lot of people are sort of playing with it and chasing the dragon. They're not finding what they're looking for, so they're constantly looking for that next thing that might fulfill them, and they follow trends, whether that trend...
the new shiny object. Yes.
I think that happens a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I was curious what experiences you folks might have had with that. Thank you. I'll get off the phone now so I can watch you on my screen.
Well, thank you so much for calling.
I would say blessed be, but I know that's not the Alexandrian thing to do between men, so you'll be blessed.
No, actually, there's nothing wrong with Alexandrians saying blessed be to a man. We just won't say it to someone who's not Alexandrian or Gardnerian.
Yeah.
Well, we won't.
Okay.
Some might.
Yeah, so
okay.
You can still say it to a dude.
Okay.
That's fine.
It has
Thank you very much.
particular meaning within our craft that you'll find that it's a big thing since I said it, which maybe I shouldn't have, but he said something that was incorrect, so I want to say it.
Of course.
Blessed be is a blessing between initiates. And in Alexandrian craft, we recognize Gardnerians as being in the same religious cult we are in. Different castes, different, and once again, speaking of from my perspective, not the universal Alexandrian. However, blessed be is has a great meaning to us. It's a salute saying, I know you're an initiate.
Yeah.
So when a non-initiate says it to me, I do not respond with blessed be, I respond in some other kind way. I realize they're being kind.
Yeah, it's not a mean thing, no.
And if I don't know you're an initiate, I probably won't say it back either. That's me. I'm not saying that's everyone.
Yeah.
I know elders who say it to lots of people, but to me it has a significant meaning from the first time it was said to me.
Yeah, but it's not like I'm going to be mad at you.
But it's not a polarity. That's not an act of polarity. Not in Alexandrian, anyway.
No. You can say it to a man.
Yeah. You say
Blessed be,
blessed be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love how, the first caller. Thank you for calling in, though. So, someone asked, for someone interested in becoming an initiate, would you announce a public ritual if you ever have them?
A public initiation ritual?
No, I think they're saying, do you ever have public rituals? Somebody who might be interested in your religion could
we
come
do not
to.
have public. We do not have public Alexandrian rituals. The only thing we do as an Alexandrian coven is occasionally we hold soirees. Haven't had one for a while now. A soiree is a meet and greet. We might have a guest speaker. We talk about witchcraft. We try to keep the subject on the occult and witchcraft. We drink wine. We get to know each other. It's sort of a meet and greet. It's a custom that started out with Alex and Maxine, and they used to do it in their home, and it was quite intimate. Nowadays, most people are reticent to invite the general public into their home.
Don't come to my house.
Myself included.
Don't come to my house.
So I don't do it at my home. However, I do public rituals with our festivals, and I have started doing Sabbath rituals at the store in our temple here in New Orleans for the general public. However, they are not Alexandrian rituals.
Yeah. So part of it is we got to keep the mystery alive. The door's kind of got to be a little bit shut so that you'll work for it.
It's like the Masons.
Yeah.
We're here. We'll talk to you about it, but if you're not initiated,
we'll vet your credit like
you're
they do.
not coming to our rituals and we're not telling you everything.
Yeah. And this ties into what another person said. Carrie asked, if you're on the path to seeking initiation, should you be practicing as a solitary witch?
I think that's it. Do you want to take this, Shoshana?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that you should be developing meditation skills. You should be developing consciousness, mindfulness. You should be reading. You should be trying to connect to the divine. What is it Dion Fortune says? We take the first step to initiation the moment we recognize the divine within and without and try to unify it or whatever. It's a beautiful quote from the Path of Initiation, one of her works. So yes, you should be, but you're not going to be able to create the rituals we do because they're only done in initiatory settings. So yeah, you work as you can, is what I would say.
There are some groups that have outer court groves or whatever they want to call them, that they offer sort of that sort of thing that works for them. I don't do it because I just don't do it for my own reasons. Not knocking it if it works for other people. It's not a part of the original practice. I'm not
against them though.
I don't like to have a commitment with someone before a commitment. So I prefer to.
It's a promise ring.
What's worked for me is just an organic process, and that's the way my craft has always worked. I do not see the point in taking someone through a training system that is like preparing them for a training system. I think that is something that should be done on your own. When you're solitary, you can do whatever you like. However, here is my little thing that I would say, which sounds very disrespectful, but I love how it sounds.
Great.
The only thing I dislike about solitaries is they're not solitary enough. So if you're seeking initiation, you really don't want to be solitary. What you're asking is, should you work with others before you're initiated? Well, you can. You can do whatever you want. But you're clearly desiring community if you are desiring to be initiated. So I would say, go to pagan meetings, meet other groups, meet as many people as you want, go to public rituals, read books, do whatever you can, because magic follows the path of least resistance. So the more opportunities you create, the more likely you are to find that which you are seeking.
Sure.
So it's up to you, really. Though.
I think we've strayed a little bit, and by a little bit I mean like a country mile.
No, not too bad.
From the concept of rebellion.
Focus questions.
I know, because of the concept of rebellion and dedication. But I think it's important because initiation is in a way a rebellion, right? And also a dedication. So I get why it keeps coming up. But I wanted to go back to the concept of rebellion for a minute. I think there are cheap rebellions and there are legitimate rebellions, right? So here's what I mean by that. There have been a lot of stories in New Orleans of grave robbing, right? It's a thing that has been a thing in the history of our city for a while, right? And certain traditions are very open about needing it or wanting it, and it's a topic that seems to come up an odd amount of time. And I had somebody tell me once, I respect that. That's real witchcraft, that's real necromancy, that's rebelling against the nature of, the law and everything, and, going in and doing it. Okay. I could not...
Do you want someone to take your skull out?
Well, that's what they're saying.
Or your mother's.
They're so beyond that, though, they're rebelling. That's not rebellion to me, true rebellion, because it's not going to teach you anything. Let me tell you something. Take care of somebody who's dying for a couple years. Take care of somebody who's ill. Watch them die. And then you're going to learn a lot more about death than hopping a cemetery wall at 3 a.m. because you can, right? So my point is that I think there's rebellion for the sake of it, and then there's rebellion that's higher, right? So the reason I think initiation is coming up a lot is because people are realizing we are saying witchcraft is a form of rebellion, but it is a rebellion against the right enemy, right? If that is to be, understood.
Initiation is a rebellion unto itself.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
It is a rebellion, right? I choose not to be shackled.
I choose.
So somebody said, how do you find a coven if you're in a place where they're really rare, like the Bible Belt?
Unfortunately, this is the hard truth there. That's all on you. My advice can only be this. If it's something you really want, do it. Whether that means you have to travel or move. I know that's not easy for everyone, but the reality of the situation is I do believe that if it's supposed to happen, it will. And yes. I do believe that if you move, if you create that vibration, it will be heard in the universe. I do believe in that. There's an old story. I'm not going to I was going to sidetrack some more. But I do believe that, now my advice as far as places to look is, obviously Witchfox, Facebook, social media groups. Unfortunately, the United States is an enormous country, and there are many states where there are not initiatory covens, a lot of them. So that's been problematic, which is why there are so many American groups that are not connected to that, and people end up doing something else or starting up their own ad hoc coven, which if you're in, Alabama or something, and there's no other group, and you meet 3 or 4 people who want to work witchcraft, and you do want, a valid lineage, but you don't have it at the time, I still say work together with that understanding and work with the old gods. Don't wait. You don't have to wait on the sidelines. You can practice the religion of witchcraft without being initiated. But if you make that a goal, send it out to the universe and keep it as your goal, as your ideal. And it will happen if you actually become a part of that process.
Yeah, it becomes.
But unfortunately, we
thing.
cannot travel the country initiating people. It just, it doesn't work that way. And training is required. You can be an initiate without having any training. Many have proven that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So taking it back to rebellion versus dedication, someone asked, what does dedication to deity look like to you?
To me, well, you answer that.
Dedication to the gods? This is, I don't know why this is like kind of zapping me a little bit as an intense question. What does it mean?
Jump in if you want.
What does it mean to be dedicated to the gods? To desire to be like them.
To allow them to be real.
To allow them to be real and to desire to be like them.
To allow them to work into the world through you. We become portals for the gods in the world of men.
Yeah.
And I think that allowing them to re-emerge into the world, I think one of the biggest contributions of religious witchcraft has been the gateway opening for the old gods. You know, it started out with the elders of witchcraft, you know, the Garganarians and the Alexandrians, worshipping a god and goddess from a mystery cult perspective as a fertility cult through the vein of witchcraft, European witchcraft. And what's happened since that time has been a movement, a plethora of movements for all these gods to be worshipped that are not necessarily our gods, other gods. So I think of it as Dorian Valiente's poem, Two are the mystical pillars that stand at the gates of the shrine. We really were the messengers of the gods. Witches were the messengers of the gods, and I think we always will be.
Psychopomps, Hermes.
For the positive and the negative. We are getting close to wrapping up, so let's end this with one last question and then decide what our show is going to be next week.
Sure.
Take one of theirs if we can.
Sure. I think this is an interesting one. When someone was talking about, well, what about living in the Bible Belt and being rebellious there is valid. And I want to go back to what I said earlier when I was kind of knocking on this. You know, I was kind of like, I grew up in Appalachia, so don't think I don't know what you're talking about. You know, deep in Appalachia. Like, so I get.
Speak it. Say it. Come on, do it.
I get what you're saying.
You did your French and everything, so give us an.
So now I sound like I'm straight from the hills. No.
Because it sounds like you're saying fake. So can I ask you a question? Is your proper English a fake accent?
Not as bad as yours.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes,
though?
I do. No, the way that I speak is not naturally the way that I spoke when I was younger.
Yeah, mine either. Or
No,
was it?
it is constructed in a way. I think I still sound
Mom,
like I have
I stopped talking where you
I think I sound like I have a very heavy
What would you
Southern
do if my
accent.
mother said, he's doing that since he's a child?
Since he was a wee bairn.
I don't know anymore.
No, no one does. Everybody I talked to that knew you when you were younger is like, no, honey, it's always been like this.
Well, those were the witches, though.
Yeah. People, so I get what you're saying. If, you know, rebellion, I need to be rebellious. I need to say, hail Satan. I need to wear the crazy whatever. Okay, I get it. I really do. I understand that there's a catharsis there. I understand that it's important. And I understand that sometimes it's a political message, like how that, you know, the Temple of Satan is doing things with abortion rights right now and whatnot. I get it. I get the power of that egregore. I'm not knocking it. What I'm saying is my witchcraft is not a hobby. I am a priest. My witchcraft is a religion. You know, my witchcraft is a huge part of my life. I've not missed a single church meeting, so to speak, in 4 years. You know, like, this is not something that I want to wear as a political statement. It's a path. And if you come to me and I'm going to ever teach you, I'm going to need you to understand that that's what this is. This is not a hobby, right? And so have your rebellion. But if you want to be more than that, good. Right?
I'm going to say one thing to sort of summarize this before we leave you all this evening. Levi said something earlier, and I agreed with it. I wondered what he would say because it was a question I wrote. What do you think is more powerful, dedication or rebellion? And I have to say, I think they're equally powerful, however situational.
Yeah.
I think rebellion is only powerful in the face of tyranny and control and oppression. I think dedication is, you know, the tortoise against the hare, you know,
sure.
Which is sort of rebellion is the hare, right? So, you know, I think that rebellion has its place. We're rebels. I mean, look at him.
How dare you? What, I don't look like your average elementary school teacher?
He doesn't. You know,
I get that a lot from the kids, by the way.
He's trying to look like Anton LaVey.
And succeeding.
Yes,
but
succeeding.
He got a little chunky at the end, so we're going to...
Yeah, well, it's not over yet.
How dare you?
We're still very young.
Some of us are.
Hey, hello. Anyway, nobody's dating me on you. Anyway, next week's topic, we had discussed it being the ever controversial, the devil.
Our friend the devil.
Our friend the devil.
We could do that. Or pop culture and witchcraft.
Oh, that was the other one. What do you guys want to hear right now?
Yeah, we can either do pop culture and witchcraft.
Or the devil.
Or the devil. Or how about the afterlife? Ghosts.
Not yet.
Okay. No on that. No dead people. Stan, Satan.
Oh, he wants...
Everybody wants Stanton Levi.
It's only one person.
Clever. I mean, there's pros and cons to everybody. Alex says pop culture.
Well, his name's Alex. We have to go
so it's a sign from God. Okay.
God said pop culture.
We'll do pop culture and witchcraft.
Pop culture. We will eventually do the devil. Oh, that person said the devil. Carrie Foot. Carrie Foot, we're outing you. Let's see what the cards say.
Let's see what the cards say. Perfect.
You get to interpret.
As always, I am the oracle.
I have my moments.
Actually, you're incredibly psychic. You've said things to me that literally I've only heard in dreams. It's Something happens in a coven, sometimes we get psychically
Don't
linked.
tell people, they'll start asking me questions.
Oh, no, I said in a coven. They're not in the church.
People I talk to. Yeah.
7 of Wands. Ooh, that could be either one. Cut the deck in
That's
half for
very
an Arcana.
male.
It is. I want an Arcana card. Another 7.
I don't know who that is.
The Page of Pentacles. That's pop culture. That's,
But that's the devil, I think.
Is it?
We need a major arcana card.
We do. I'm like,
Hold
all
on.
these like wands. These are probably about some personal issues we're both going through, and later we're gonna be like,
No,
oh my
I
god,
made
I
it.
pulled
Seven is seven. I would say that's
Somebody said, let's get into charms.
It's
Calm
not
down.
6, is it? 7 is the
That
holy
reboot
one.
though. God.
Oh, Daenerys.
A lot's happening. The Ace of Cups, the Fool. So you got your big cards.
I don't know what.
And the Ace of Pentacles, money. It's pop culture. We'll do pop culture and witchcraft.
We're going to do pop culture and we'll do the devil later.
Big fan.
Anyway, good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Covendom. Next week we will do pop culture and witchcraft, which is all about Levi
Is it?
and his Instagram.
I don't have any pictures on Instagram, and yet people follow. I'm like, what are you following? There's nothing
You
there.
should get your skinny pictures while it lasts.
How dare you? Like, nobody even knows what you're talking about.
I have proof.
I know, and if you ever show it, I will murder you in
don't,
your
but
sleep.
if you go through my...
You know what?
There
It's
were
been
covens
great.
in Europe.
I've had a
That's
great
what
time.
they're called.
Thank
the
you.
congregation. Covens
Cheers.
in Europe, in America, and in Australia, and they have one right
Blessed
here.
be you.
That whole bunch. The parties with the singing and the flute and the chanting, those are espes or Sabbaths or
Honey,
whatever
don't get
they're called.
excited, huh?
Read what they do, guys. They use blood in their rituals.